That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Mom, the directorial debut of Adam O'Brien, which Uncorked Entertainment is releasing in a limited theatrical window on February 7th before it goes to VOD on February 11th, 2025.
Directorial debut. What is Mom about? Struggling with postnatal depression and feeling misunderstood by her husband, Meredith begins to experience terrifying visions foreshadowing an ultimate tragedy. I mean, that basically gives it all away.
Meredith Baxter Burney.
What's your pull quote?
Postpartum depression becomes a preposterous ploy in the unremarkably titled thriller Mom, which feels like more of a science fiction film considering how it portrays the consequences of homicide and mental health rehabilitation.
Mine. This mother on the brink of madness narrative seems like it's missing a few screws.
Wah, wah.
Yeah.
Especially since it was marketed to press as an homage to Rosemary's Baby.
This movie's doing a lot because it feels like, it feels like a lot of things, but it's a mix of like a haunted house story with something like Night Bitch, or we reviewed a movie called Baby Ruby.
Baby Ruby it was reminding me of. This is a subgenre onto itself. I recall, I haven't seen it forever, I think it's a 2007 film with Vera Farmiga called Joshua. It's a horror film and this baby does not stop crying. Or Lyle with Gabby Hoffman came to mind.
But the story's pretty simple. There's a couple played by Emily Hampshire.
As Meredith.
And
Jared, played by François Arnaud.
And we see them come home from the hospital with baby in tow. And they walk into this new house, and immediately it's clear that Emily's character, Meredith, is not connecting with the idea of being a mother or her damn child. So for the next 30, 40 minutes, it's just her having these sort of visions that look like, it's a combination of things. She sees what look like maybe cockroaches.
Lots of bugs.
And then she sees this little 8-year-old kid with blonde hair.
Little towhead.
Which is weird because mom and dad are brunettes. And then we see this Samara from The Ring looking thing running around. And then we see that Meredith is very frustrated with the baby, while the husband, Jared, seems to have taken to being a parent like a duck to water. He feels very connected to the child. He loves being around the child. So there's that. When one day, Meredith is giving the baby a bath and she's distracted by her visions. So we see her put her baby, which is what? I don't know how.
A couple weeks
old. This little baby is in the bath, like a big ass bathtub with the water running. Meredith gets, the most tense scene in the movie is this. Meredith gets up and starts chasing that imaginary 8-year-old with Samara.
The scraggly haired lady. Yeah.
And drowns the damn baby.
She leaves the water running and just goes and lays down in bed looking catatonic.
And the husband freaks out thinking wait a minute, and runs, and we hear him, crying and
what did you
terror.
do?
We immediately cut to the funeral. I was surprised to see Meredith at the funeral.
Same.
I thought for sure her ass would be in jail, but we're going to get to that. Anyway, once the funeral's done, Jared and his sister-in-law, Meredith's sister,
Katherine,
they are okay, time to call Popo. I don't know, but they have some people come and pick her ass up.
It's very Blanche Dubois at the end of Streetcar Named Desire, except Emily's screaming.
They make it seem like it's their decision to have her locked up, but only for a few months. Then we immediately see her be taken away, and then the next scene is her back. But the husband's not there. He's saying, I can't live with you. I need my space. We need to work some things out. Immediately, Meredith is insane. She's running around this house basically with the 8-year-old in her head, just raising it. And then she calls Jared saying, why don't you come over for dinner? I want to see you. I'm so much better. So she has a dinner party.
With the two neighbors who we've established she also does not like.
These nosy Parkers, her sister-in-law, and of course her sister. Her sister, and her husband. And then immediately we see that Meredith is on her bullshit because the 8-year-old is sitting at the table too, in her mind.
And she's addressing
Alex. It.
Alex.
So of course everyone's alarmed. Meredith gets upset. Everyone leaves, but she begs her husband, please stay the night. And we need to talk about how the husband seems like he's very easily convinced about everything.
Yes.
But he decides to stay. And while this fool is asleep, the imaginary 8-year-old tells the mom, Meredith, you need to kill him. We'd be so much happier if he was not around. So when Jared wakes up, he and Meredith have a little altercation. She stabs this man in the eye and then brutally, graphically bashes his head in with a baseball bat.
It's very Jack Nicholson in The Shining.
That's the end. We see her kind of like discombobulated, like comes up to, because that happens, it appears in the basement maybe. And then she comes up to the living room and she's just sitting there. And then and then we get like a flashback to a bunch of scenes we already saw. And then the final scene is Meredith looking out the window, trying to warn her former self, like a flashback to the couple walking in with the baby, telling them don't come in.
Like a Mobius strip.
This movie was wild.
We have always lived in the castle.
But it didn't work for me. I'm sorry.
No, it's too much like other films. I like Emily Hampshire well enough, but
I don't think she worked for me. There's something about that character in particular and the performance that just felt, I was very disconnected from it, which I guess you could argue like, well, she's disconnected from her child and maybe that's but it's not that. It's like, there are no levels. The minute we meet her, she's off. And then when she starts to become really mentally ill or go through some psychosis, it's just like that.
Well, there's certainly no psychological development, which I think would be necessary. And I find it curious, it's a male director, 3 male screenwriters. It's like, I don't know if there's much that makes sense about how this woman is suffering through postpartum depression or whatever diagnosis you would give her psychological ailments, but
I'm going to start with what I was hoping this would be, and that would have seemed fresh to me, because the opening of the film, when they come back with the baby and they're kind of exhausted and on the couch, the wife says to the husband, like talking about parenting and being parents, like, you didn't even want this. And he tells her, well, neither did you. And that's my first clue to what I thought the movie was going to be, which it's not, which is an examination of how 2 adults who knew that they didn't want children end up making one. And then how one of them ultimately, I mean, I think it's fair to say Meredith is not a good parent.
No, but
so what responsibility does the partner have? Like in this instance, what responsibility does the father have for making a baby with this woman who he knew would not be a good mother?
Well, yeah, it's about the lack of parity in gender roles, for sure, because she takes all of the blame.
So I thought it was going to be that, like more, that's what I assumed it would be, but it's not. It's just really this woman kind of going insane and killing her husband after she done kill her baby.
There are some interesting moments it tries to highlight. For instance, as they walk into the house, there's a comment about how it smells, and then we learn that her amniotic fluid, like when her water broke, is still drenching the kitchen floor, and she's the one cleaning it up, which I found curious.
Well, it was curious because that clued me into, he's going to be very detached. But then very quickly we see that no, he's actually very connected to the baby.
To a degree.
But then we don't see a lot because he goes to work all day.
In that moral high ground kind of way, like, this is what a good parent does. Here, bye, I'm going to be gone all day. Please have dinner ready.
Well, he comes home a couple times and says, hey, like...
Could you clean the house?
Like, could you try? And he even says, like, well, I mean, can you just do your fair share? And then, of course, she reacts like, I'm home all day with the baby. But what's missing is, like, I know people didn't like Night Bitch. I did. Kind of loved it. But I think what worked really well in Night Bitch is that we saw what she was going through. So when her man, so it's the opposite. Like, we don't really see what the husband does except that he travels a lot. So he's very disconnected from what's going on at home. Like he's not even in the same like vicinity.
The privilege of free time, yeah.
So when he comes home and night bitch and tells the wife, like, you know, can you kind of get it together? When she gets mad, I felt that for her. But this lady is like, well, we just see her at home seeming very like she doesn't want to do anything. I don't know. I think that depiction of postpartum depression seems very simple.
Yes.
And does a disservice to this character. So I did think they go to couples therapy.
There's lots of scenes at couples therapy, a lot of repetitive motions.
That was going to be my note, is that while I thought that the couples therapy would have been a good opportunity to like really get some understanding of these two people, it did feel quite repetitive. Considering the final sort of montage being flashbacks to scenes we saw 60 minutes prior, I felt like the therapy sessions were kind of wasted.
It's repetitive. The haunting, and as we learn, she's haunting herself.
Yeah, in the end, we see that Samara-looking lady is actually Meredith.
Which isn't much of a reveal. Also clocked that before it was made readily apparent. But why and to what end? And all of the vision she has feel like the exact same scene over and over again.
Why this whole like scary movie type thing with the mystery woman? Why that blonde 8-year-old kid?
I don't get, I don't get why she's imagining him as an 8-year-old per se. And again, that's where the scenes with the therapist really fall through, because the therapist asks her, or she talks about this dream she has of Alex as an 8-year-old. She's like, well, that's actually a good sign because
you see a future.
You see a future. And of course, Emily Hampshire has this way of being like, well, it doesn't feel that way.
Okay, why the kid? Why the cockroaches?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you want to. This isn't at the level of even worth a citation of Charlotte Perkins Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper and the whole legacy of women in madness in literature and film. But I guess it exists in that camp. It's just not very effective on any of those fronts.
We also see Meredith clicking her fingernails in a really annoying way, like often. And I also kind of didn't quite understand what I'm supposed to get from that. I think a lot of moments, because there are some shocking moments. At one point, we see that Meredith sees her baby burning in the fireplace. Or, you know, when she's preparing dinner for the dinner party, she's sort of manically cutting celery and then you think something's going to happen. I think there are a lot of like elements just thrown in.
It just seems random, because the clicking of the fingernail, that was making, now that I'm thinking about it, recall, there's a similar tick to Little White Michelle Williams in Shutter Island, because she thinks that they're like insects in the kids' heads and she drowns them.
You know, speaking of her asking for help, there's a scene in the kitchen where the husband says, like, can you maybe try to clean up a little? And she just loses it. She grabs a broom and starts sweeping, being, you know, like an ass. And then there's this, again, a lot of repetition. We see the neighbors outside.
Yeah.
And she seems very bothered by that, which again, I just thought she comes across as, well, another note I had is, wouldn't it have been interesting to examine this idea of like couples who get together and everything happens so quickly? Like, we just met, 3 months later, we're engaged. 6 months later, you're pregnant. We get married a month after that. You have this baby. We bought this house. And it's like, oh, I didn't realize that you have some very serious undiagnosed mental health issues.
Yes. It's like, I think I said as we were watching it, there's no baseline to this character.
Right.
Like, and wouldn't have been interesting to see that maybe she has, because a lot of people are highly functioning despite the maybe issues that they might have that are undiagnosed. But what if she was in a position where maybe she was highly anxious and had some OCD, but that actually worked well for her occupation, like made her succeed.
It was easy to mask.
But taken out of that environment, all of these things that suddenly become evident, you know, kind of like when everybody got stuck together during COVID-19.
So I was hoping maybe we would have delved into that area of how he's just so like caught off guard that she's like this. But it seems like he's not really reacting. Like, she starts swinging that broom, breaks the window because she's mad at the neighbors looking at her. And it's like, they live next door. They're going to be in the yard. And the husband even says, what are you doing? Those are our friends. And while she's swinging the broom, she gets very close to the baby and actually hits the husband. And I just thought, like, we also, I said I would get back to it. The husband seems very easily, like, soothed.
It's not that he's spineless, because he is like confronting her about her behavior, but not in an effective way. But then he's unable to defend himself, it seems, because after she gets out of whatever facility she's in, I guess we didn't have the budget to depict that. She invites him to this dinner party. I don't want to be in that house. I'm not ready. And within minutes, okay, I'll come for a dinner party. And then acts insane at the dinner party. Stay the night with me. I don't want to stay the night. Okay, I'll stay the night.
Well, what I was going to say about that is I was so surprised that because she starts having issues very early on.
I'd say from the time they walk in the door.
From the time they walk into the door, and I guess I was waiting for him to maybe offer her, like, you know what, why don't you take a break? I'll take another month off work. Mm-hmm. Why don't you go somewhere and just relax? Like, clearly you've been through a lot. It just seems like everything escalates so quickly. She's already really bad when the husband's like, I have to go back to work. Mm-hmm. Okay, the funeral. I did think it was funny. Well, two things. After she basically, killed her baby because of neglect, I was for sure thinking she was going to be somewhere not at home.
Right.
But then we see her and it's like, okay. Then we see this big ass casket. And I thought it was funny that someone does ask, why is the casket so big? And the husband says, well, she thought the baby needed something it could grow into. Okay. Then when they call whatever number they call to have her picked up, I still need to understand how that works. How was, like, did Child Protective Services or someone not come and evaluate or investigate?
That's why is this a science? What parallel universe is this? I mean, it was Canadian actors shot in Canada. I know that Canadians wouldn't handle it this way.
So towards the end, when now she's full-blown insane and basically raising the 8-year-old blonde boy, she and the boy are lying in bed and the boy pulls out a tooth and puts it under the pillow for the tooth fairy. And this is the same night that the husband is staying over. Mm-hmm. So when he gets up, of course, the 8-year-old's not there, but he sees his wife hovering over the bassinet, and we see that one of her teeth is missing. So she pulled her own tooth out.
Well, I think she was drawing pictures.
It's just a lot. Oh, there is a key piece of information we get that I think, for how powerful it is, I feel like maybe should have been made a bigger deal of. But at the end, she tells her husband the story about how she had a hamster when she was a little girl.
That was in therapy.
Oh, in therapy. And she says that when she was little, she had a hamster, and the hamster had babies, and her mother told her, do not touch those babies. But she couldn't help it. She wanted to cuddle and nuzzle the baby. So she took one of the babies and loved on it. And then, as many of us know, if the mother hamster smells another scent, they'll kill the baby. Mm-hmm. So she watched the mother hamster bite off the head of the baby she had just cuddled up on. Mm-hmm. And so she says ever since then, she's been afraid. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that also felt like you're really watering this down. Like how, I don't know, I think it just makes motherhood and the trials of motherhood and postpartum depression seem so simple.
Well, lots of people slip through the cracks all the time, even when you have loved ones that do mean well or are trying their best to care for you. But after the tooth pulling out incident, she's on the phone with her sister who's been told about it, and she references it, and the sister says, we're gonna have to start checking in on you more often.
Mama, it is too late. She already killed her baby.
What?
It's too late.
What do you, how much time has passed here?
Oh,
in that dinner party,
that was awkward.
It just seems like a well-intentioned but a misfire all around.
Yeah.
This is what happened. What's her name in Schitt's Creek? Stevie? This is what happens to Stevie when the roses leave town.
Sorry to these people. I also understand this filmed in 2019.
It filmed in 2019. I think it premiered at the Glasgow Film Fright Fests earlier in 2024. So I don't know if they had trouble finding distribution or because of the pandemic they were sitting on it.
I didn't think this worked.
No.
What would you give Mom?
I'm giving it a 1.
Oh, I would give it 2 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.